Welcome back to Mystery and Murder, where we unearth the chilling truths lurking behind headline-making cases. We venture in deep, really deep into the lives of victims and suspects that have captivated the public. Now, as you know, we've been talking about the Cleveland kidnapping case, featuring excerpts from my exclusive interview with one of Ariel Castro's former victims, Michelle Knight. So far, we've been dissecting Ariel Castro's horrific deeds and analyzing his psyche. And it's been horrendous to hear about what he put Michelle through. I don't want to go back through everything that went on. We're going to talk about that a little bit more today, but it's really hard to wrap your mind around the fact that for Michelle Knight, this went on for 11 years. Think about that, 11 years. You know, we talk about things that go on for days or weeks or even months, but 11 years, this was like half of her life. Now, just as in the other two episodes, this is going to contain descriptions of physical and sexual abuse, as well as self-harm. On our last episode, Castro had just kidnapped his second victim, Amanda Berry. Now, Amanda was a 17-year-old girl who, like Michelle, was walking home. Michelle was the one telling her story. So everything that we've talked about so far was all from Michelle's perspective. I tried to glean from her what the dynamic was like in the house now that a second victim had been brought in. Michelle says that she was undoubtedly the one that Castro hated most and claimed that while all of them suffered, she often bore the brunt of his viciousness, his hatred, his venting of all of this that he had bottled up inside him. You know, it's so odd to even hear myself talking about it like that, because how could he hate someone he didn't even know? He didn't know Michelle Knight. She knew his daughter as an acquaintance, which is why she trusted him enough to get in his car to begin with, but he didn't know her. Let me catch you up by letting you hear some more of her talk about what was going on at this particular point in time. During the time that Amanda was there, did that distract him from you? Did he focus on you less? Did he abuse you more?
I think it was a little bit more because she wouldn't comply with him. He'll come in my room and he'll be like, well, she won't do it, so you have to do it. And if I didn't do it, he would force it on me.
And you're on about a 3-foot chain, so it's hard to get away.
Yeah.
Why do you think he would accept no from her and come force you to do it?
I think it's because he liked her more. Because he has I think an obsession with blondes.
Uh-huh.
He will always say that, I don't want to make her cry, I don't want to make her upset, or I don't want to hear her whiny mouth. He would try to make her happy instead of sad.
Now, you heard her say that she thought he liked her more. It goes without saying that all three of these women suffered greatly at the hands of Ariel Castro. But Castro knew all of Michelle's weak spots, and he seemed to take a particularly sick delight in tearing her down. Again, I keep coming back and saying you need to recognize that this was a power trip for him. Whenever you're dealing with a sociopath, psychopath, whatever label we want to put on him, that wielding this power and him getting this rush of adrenaline he gets when he wields that power and has her under his thumb is a real payoff for him. So while he had by this time provided her with a few more meager provisions, like some ratty clothes and occasional access to television, Michelle was still not only his physical prisoner, but a prisoner of his venomous words, which he always had in wide supply.
He'll see Amanda's mother on TV, and the first thing he'll say to me is, "Where's your family? Why don't you have any? They must not really love you." And it would hurt, because I knew my family didn't care. And I knew they wasn't there for me because they never was. And to see Amanda have her mother, I just wanted her to be my mother. I wanted her to say those things to me. It was just extremely painful to have somebody come in your room day after day telling you your family don't care about you. You never had a family that loved you. And that's the reason why I hate you. Because I can abuse you and nobody will care. No one.
Now, put yourself in her shoes. How horrific is that? Realize that she's been tortured, beaten, isolated, starved, and now he goes in for the psychological punishment. You can't help but just feel a broken heart for her, hearing that she felt like nobody cared for her. And luckily, now many people do. Up next, a third young woman, Gina De Jesus, is taken. The abuse intensifies. Castro begins using starvation, isolation, and even the weather itself to torment his captives. The full horror of what these women endured is just ahead. War in Iran is heating up, and the fallout's reaching us fast. Markets are rattled, global confidence is shaky, and investors are bracing for what's next. This week alone, hedge funds moved billions into hard assets, while central banks quietly stockpiled gold. In times like these, smart people don't sit back, they move toward safety. For me, that means gold and silver. Secure your future now while there's still time. Text DrPhil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. Gold is already up big this year, and with more volatility ahead, you cannot afford to wait. You could even get up to $15,000 in free silver with a qualified purchase. Don't wait for the next market shock. Text DrPhil to 50505 now before it's too late. A whole year goes by, and we come up to April of 2004. This is when Castro approaches his youngest victim, 14-year-old Gina De Jesus, as she's leaving school and offers her a ride home. Of course, where does he take her? To that dreaded house of his on Seymour Avenue. It seemed like Castro had been thinking of adding a third victim for quite some time. He had even forced Michelle to help him make preparations prior to Gina's abduction.
At the time, he was telling me that I needed to help him prepare another room. And I didn't want to prepare that room.
What did prepare mean?
I had to help him drill holes in the wall to put the chains through to hook us together.
He was forcing you to prepare a new torture chamber for a new victim.
Yes. A couple weeks later, he will say, "My daughter is coming over and I want you to meet her." I knew that wasn't his daughter.
Now, for this man to even speak about his daughters to the woman he's holding captive and brutalizing, well, it's just astonishing. It goes to show you that he has no conscience, he has no empathy, he doesn't have any ability or willingness to put himself in her position. By this point, he had worked so hard to erode Michelle's sense of self-worth, had instilled so much terror in her through his abuse that she knew she had no choice but to go along with whatever he said, just in order to see another day. She felt like he had been so close to killing her on so many occasions. She never knew when he would go too far. There were times when Michelle and the other women did try to challenge Castro. They tried to escape, coming so close to escaping to the outside world that it was just mere steps away. And a core part of Castro's twisted methodology was testing the women. He would offer them the faintest illusion of freedom, only to cruelly remind them that he controlled their fate. He dangled the promise of escape just out of reach, only to viciously snatch it away whenever he pleased, reinforcing in their minds his absolute power over them.
One of the things that I thought seemed particularly cruel that I heard you talking about is that Castro, that dude as you call him, played mind games with you. Would he try to give you what seemed like an opportunity to escape to see if you would try?
Yes.
Tell me how that happened.
He would like leave me in one room and he'll have the door slightly open.
So he would try to see if you were trying to get out.
Yeah, or like he'll leave the back door open and he'll leave the other room and I'll be in the kitchen. And he has like what they call a disco ball where you can see exactly what's in the other room.
It was like a mirror.
Yeah.
Where he could see in the other room.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And he would like have like mirrors all over the place. Like even including outside, he'll have mirrors like hanging on his fence. He made little peepholes in the door where he can see exactly inside the rooms. So he can see directly in your room to see what you're doing.
So he would watch you when you wouldn't know if he was watching or not.
Yes.
He might be there, he might not be.
Mm-hmm.
You did get to go in the backyard a little bit, right?
Yes.
Did you have to wear a disguise?
Yes.
So you'd have to put on a wig and glasses.
Yeah.
His fear was somebody would recognize you.
Yeah. Because I was so close to where I used to live.
Okay. So on one hand, he says nobody's looking for you, but on the other hand, he's afraid somebody will recognize you.
Yeah.
So he put a wig. What kind of wig was it?
It was an ugly brown wig that came to here, and then there's another one where it has a braid going like this, and it's like longer and curly.
And when you were in the backyard, did he keep you chained up?
No. He made sure that he can see me, and he made sure that anytime we were outside, he had his gun right next to him. Uh-huh. He made sure that there was no way possible that we can get away from him.
Mm-hmm. Castro's clearly a man who toyed with being caught. He was always on that razor's edge. And this had to do with his mental tendencies. And to understand that, you have to understand sociopaths and how they relate to danger and risk. Listen, to really understand this, we have to think about human behavior as being on a continuum, all human behavior being on the same continuum. And your immediate reaction has got to be, no, don't put me on the same continuum with this guy. But the truth is, we're all humans. We all have this range of behavior. And the fact that you have a hard time even imagining that somebody could be so cruel, so manipulative, so brutal, is the very way that these people are able to take advantage of someone that has a heart, has feelings, has empathy for other people, because a well-adjusted person's mind can't even go where sociopaths are. Think about this as I use the word normal. Well, let's just say typical, the way the average person tends to think, feel, and behave. And sociopaths are so deflected way out towards the ends, the fringe, that you can't even go there in your mind. You can't even go there in your thinking. That means you can't imagine them doing that, so you don't see it coming. That's how they get the advantage, because you can't conceive of someone doing that, so you don't see it coming. Sociopaths often enjoy and seek out risky situations to experience a thrill. And because they're willing to take those risks, they can exert control while also potentially enjoying chaos and disregard for rules that such situations can create. They're willing to walk that razor's edge that you're not willing to walk. They're willing to take risks that typical people wouldn't take. So you think nobody would ever do that kind of stupid thing. They would never put themselves at risk. But sociopaths are thrill-seeking. They love that excitement that they can only get with danger. They are so cold and so unfeeling that they have to go to such extremes to get the kind of arousal, to get the kind of excitement that ordinary people would get from just typical ups and downs of lives. They often crave excitement, and they only get it through novelty. This can drive them to engage in activities that you and I just wouldn't do. We would consider it just too dangerous or irresponsible. They also thrive on manipulation and control, and risky situations can provide opportunities for sociopaths to manipulate and control others. They get great reward out of this. And the reason they're able to do that is they disregard consequences. Because they lack empathy, because they lack remorse, it makes it easy for them to completely ignore potential consequences of their risky behavior. You might be nervous while you're doing something that's risky, like something as simple as driving fast on an icy road or whatever. That's because you're thinking, oh, wow, let me think of 10 things that could go wrong here. Oh, I could crash into somebody, I could hurt somebody, I could hurt myself, I could destroy this car, all the bad things that could happen. They don't even give that a thought. They just do what they're doing. They're in the moment. They don't think ahead. They don't think about what could go wrong in a given situation. So since that doesn't even occur to them, their pulse doesn't go up at all. I did a research project one time that showed that criminals have an unusually high body temperature, so they don't get fear signals. That was the hypothesis. And why does that make sense? Well, what's one of the signs of you being afraid or nervous? Well, you get all flushed, right? Your face gets red, your neck gets all flushed, you feel hot. That's one of the signs of fear. Well, for a sociopath, if they're already running hot, their peripheral skin temperature is high, they don't get that differentiation. They don't go from a normal peripheral skin temperature to going flush, which says, hey, you're afraid here. This is a warning sign. They don't get that cue because they run hot all the time, so there's no differentiation that signals to them you should be afraid. This is a signal, risk, danger, risk, danger. The theory of the research project was maybe they don't get that signal that other people get. And sure enough, the prison population ran hotter than the normal population. So maybe they missed that cue. Maybe that's part of the problem. Also, taking risks and getting away with them can be a way that sociopaths gain social power and attention, even if it's a negative attention. We think about it at a much lesser degree as just showing off. People get attention for showing off, and they love that. It's a payoff for them, a social payoff for them. Even if it's criticism, people say, oh, you're just a big show-off. Well, at least they're getting paid attention to. This is just showing off on steroids. They do crazy things. Lack of social cues. Sociopaths often struggle with understanding social cues and norms. They don't read the room. They don't read society. They don't recognize that this is not normal. So it makes them less likely to perceive risk so they can avoid them. So here you've got a guy that has 3 people, 3 young girls, locked in a house in a neighborhood. And particularly in the warm months, spring, summer, and early fall, there's a lot of activity in this neighborhood. I've been there. I've stood on that street in front of this house. And as I've said earlier, they're close together. People are walking by, they're walking their dogs, they're throwing the ball around, they're hanging out. And he's got 3 captives inside this house. He hasn't taken them to the woods. They're not in a remote cabin somewhere. He's doing this right in the middle of a busy neighborhood. Very risky. He got away with it for 11 years, it's true, but it was because he kept them chained up. He had the windows boarded up. But at any time, one of them could have screamed out the window. It didn't happen because they were so afraid, but it could have happened. Very high-risk behavior. Now, during Michelle's time in captivity, she was close with Gina. They became like sisters, she said. Michelle said she was protective over her, even moving in front of her to take her beatings when Castro was angered. Castro kept Michelle and Gina chained together in the same small room where they remained for years until their eventual escape. And, I emphasize years because it's very easy to lose the timeline here. These 2 were chained together for years. In a horrifying display of control and cruelty, he assaulted them both while the other was forced to bear witness, bound to the same mattress, powerless to intervene. Sometimes Michelle said she held Gina's hand or tried to spare her by saying, "Please take me instead. I'm the one you hate." Remember, we spoke about how Castro impregnated Michelle by rape on multiple occasions. Michelle said it happened 5 times. Each time he would then beat her in order to make her miscarry, subsequently then blaming her for the loss. Now, Amanda, the 3rd girl, however, was allowed to carry Castro's baby to full term. As I said before, Michelle was very respectful in my interview with her not to speak for Amanda or Gina. However, she did tell me how Amanda gave birth during their time in captivity. She explained it from her point of view and how harrowing that experience was.
Michelle speaks only of her recollections of their shared experience. Amanda gets pregnant.
2006 is when she had the baby.
And it comes time that she goes into labor. Tell me about that night.
It was the middle of the night. I was out of it. He comes in the room and he tells me that she's been in labor all day, and he told me I had to bring a swimming pool upstairs for her to sit in so the floor wouldn't get messed up or the bed from the blood.
So you get her in this tub, this baby pool.
Yeah.
On the bed, and what happens?
Well, she decides to push at the wrong time, which causes the baby to get stuck. So I'm sitting there telling her, you can't push or the baby's gonna get stuck and she won't be able to breathe. And she sits there and says, but I can't help it, I'm pushing now. And I told her, I see the baby's head and the baby is blue and we need to get this baby out right now. So I'm sitting there, I'm grabbing her arms and I'm telling her, when I say 1, 2, 3, I want you to push as hard as possible and grab onto my hands. My baby finally comes out, and I tell her, you gotta just pray to God that I can get her to breathe. So I laid the baby flat on her back and lifted her head up, and I started doing compressions with 2 fingers. And I started to breathe into her mouth. 5 minutes later, she started screaming.
You saved the baby's life.
Yes.
The whole time Michelle was in the midst of this act of heroism, and it was nothing short of heroism, helping Amanda and saving her baby, Castro was yelling at her, telling her that it would be her fault if the baby died. Now, think about that in context. He's given Amanda no care at all during her pregnancy. No prenatal care, no visits to a doctor, no nothing. Isn't providing her any care at all for this delivery. But yet he's browbeating Michelle, saying, if anything happens here, it's your fault. Of course, it couldn't be his fault, couldn't be his negligence. But why did Castro decide to let Amanda have his baby but not allow Michelle to? Michelle said she believed it was because he sensed her inner strength. He could tell that as time went on, she was becoming emboldened, and he could control her less and less with his savageness. He felt like she was maybe adapting to it and was less vulnerable. So Amanda had her baby girl named Jocelyn. Castro began to call Amanda his wife and doted on Jocelyn, taking her out to church and to visit his family. Think about that. How cold and brazen do you have to be to take an infant of a woman you are holding captive in your home to meet your family? Now, not the mother, just the infant. Meanwhile, these women hadn't seen their own families in years. At one point, Castro had his family come over to his home. That's right, come over to his home where he was holding 3 women hostage. Of course, he made the 3 women hide, chained in a van in his garage. And when his family tried to poke around or enter certain areas like the basement, Castro told them he was renovating and they had to stay out. The audacity of this man's actions, impossible to comprehend. Put yourself, if you can, in his place for a minute and think about what conversation, what internal dialogue this twisted individual had to be going through in his head when he planned this visit. Okay, I'm going to have my family over here. Think about what a rush it'll be when I have my family over here and I have these 3 kidnap victims, these 3 captives in the same house with my family, and they won't know it. What a coup. I'll be conning everybody. What a rush that had to be for this twisted soul. And although it was alleged that Amanda was his favorite, in the end, Castro's so-called hierarchy, it meant nothing. None of the women were granted an ounce of true respect, an ounce of autonomy. It seemed as though he deliberately fostered a sense of rivalry between them, feeding his own delusions of power and desirability, as though they were jockeying for position, jockeying for his favor, like they all wanted him and they were fighting among themselves to be his favorite. How delusional can he get? In reality, their compliance was never about affection or preference. It was just about pure survival, driven by the constant fear of what he might do next because he had complete control over them. And he twists this into believing that he was some kind of Casanova, not Castro. And imagine, this goes on for 11 years for Michelle. a little less for Amanda, and some less for Gina. But one day, one fateful day, May 6, 2013 to be exact, something miraculous happened. Castro, so arrogant, so narcissistic, so delusional, was leaving to go get food. And in his arrogance, maybe it was his carelessness, maybe he was getting so delusional that he thought, I don't really need to. But he left without bolting the door shut on his way out.
He's gone, right? How long had he been gone from the house?
Approximately all day.
And nobody was chained up, but everybody was locked in.
I thought we were locked in. I didn't know that we wasn't.
Did you see him before he left?
Just for a brief second, and he said he was going to his mother's house and then going to pick up something for us to eat. Then next thing I know, I hear pounding. So I'm telling Gina, I was like, turn down the radio. Something's going on downstairs. We turn down the radio. We don't hear nothing for like a few seconds. And then we start hearing like rough pounding. I was like, well, something's going on. So we're hiding because we're scared. We're terrified. We didn't know that the cops were down there. We thought somebody was breaking in because it was a bad neighborhood. So we're sitting there hiding behind a dresser. I go to try the door. This is when I figured out the door was unlocked. So I open it and the cops are saying, police, police, anybody up here? And I was still scared because anybody can say police. And then I seen a badge and then I just ran. I jumped on her and I never let go.
And it sounds like you jumped on him like a spider monkey. After 11 years, days and nights and freezing and torture and rape, a police officer standing in the hallway.
Yeah. And the only thing I can do is just run and I never let him go.
Think about that. A man who's holding 3 women captive, kidnapped, tortured, beaten, raped, just walks out and leaves the door unbolted. As Michelle would discover later, it was Amanda Berry who had escaped and saved all their lives. According to police, Castro had left the house that day and Amanda noticed that he had failed to lock the big inside door, though the exterior storm door remained bolted. Fearing it was another one of his cruel tests, she hesitated to break through. Castro had previously lured them with partially unlocked doors, only to punish them severely when they tried to escape. Instead, Amanda screamed for help when she spotted neighbors through the screen. Amanda later wrote in her memoir that a neighbor initially responded to her cries but left, unable to communicate due to a language barrier. He spoke primarily Spanish and struggled with English. Moments later, though, another neighbor, Charles Ramsey, arrived at the scene. Realizing the storm door was still bolted, he suggested kicking out the bottom panel. Together, Ramsey and Amanda forced a hole through the door and she crawled to freedom, clutching her 6-year-old daughter in her arms. The neighbor then rushed to call 911 from his home, while Amanda also contacted emergency services from a nearby neighbor's house, crying out, "Help me, I've been kidnapped and I've been missing for 10 years and I'm here, I'm free now." When police arrived at the scene, they entered Castro's home and found Gina and Michelle as well. Next time on Mystery and Murder, analysis by DrPhil, what happens after Michelle was freed? It was a long road to recovery. And that's actually where we got involved, helping Michelle rebuild the life that had been stolen from her. Really stolen before she ever got a chance to get some traction as an adult. We'll talk about that next week, plus what became of Ariel Castro after his arrest and his infamous Cleveland House of Horrors. That's next time on Mystery and Murder. I'm Dr. Phil. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you can reach out to the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-HOPE. That's 1-800-656-4673. Now, this hotline is operated by RAINN, R-A-I-N-N, and connects you with local sexual assault service providers who can offer free, confidential support and resources. Don't hesitate to reach out for help. I can promise you that you won't be pressured into doing anything you don't want to do. They're there to listen, and they'll meet you where you are. They don't pressure you to meet them where they are. 1-800-656-HOPE. 1-800-656-4673. You are not alone. I'll see you next time.